Welcome all attendees online and in person. We'll go around and let the introduce ourselves as co-chairs. I'm Ben Lomeli. I'm a hydrologist, retired from Department of Interior, President Friends of the Santa Cruz River. And I'm not bragging, but I think I'm the one that's been with Citizens Forum the longest on the board here, and I intend to stay as long as I can because it's a very important forum to keep updated on. So the chairs can introduce yourself, John.
So my name's John Light. I'm an area operations manager for the Nogales area for the United States Section International Boundary and Water Commission. And I'm co-chair of this forum along with Ben. And I think I've been doing this for 26 years now as co-chair. So it's something that we really enjoy doing. It's sharing information with the public, and we've gotten some good feedback on these things, and hopefully we can continue these things into the future for a long time. So,
Frankie?
Frank Pignon, I'm a public affairs officer for the USIBWC.
Jorge Maldonado, Mayor of the City of Nogales, Arizona.
Brian Vanderbilt, resident of Tubac, Arizona, and a member of the River Watch Committee and that monthly samples the Santa Cruz River.
Good enough. Who's John Cumbo? I'm a resident of Tubac, and I'm also chairperson of a small domestic water program. So,
You want to finish the members' introductions?
Sure.
Because I don't know if anybody else.
Are there any members online?
Yeah, this is Tim Grother, retired in Tubac, neighbor of Brian's, retired from the water industry.
Any other Citizen Forum board members online? No, okay, sure, we can.
Jaime
you
down.
get Jaime.
Yeah, I got Jaime.
I'm here.
In person.
Wastewater. Green to be there.
Not every board member? Is the commissioner online?
Yes, I'm here. I'm so sorry I cannot join you today, but I have been very active on Nogales issues. As you'll see in John Light's presentation, a lot of exciting stuff going on, and so we're doing some of our great improvements. And I look forward to hearing about all of the work. And of course, Sharon, thank you for presenting. You're like one of my favorite Arizonans down there. Sorry guys, she is my favorite. And I will be down there speaking at your conference. I'm looking forward to seeing you in May, I believe, or is it June? But anyways, thank you. And I'll let the rest of the introductions, and then I'll say a few words.
All right. Look at that. So any other than the board members want to go around and introduce?
Not a board member. Time Morton, HDR consulting firm. Here's a guest. She's been just being a fly on the wall.
And I'm walking around, I'm Sharon Megdal, I'm director here at the Water Resources Research Center. I'll be making some remarks soon to tell you a little bit about the Water Center and the conference coming up and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
You're welcome.
My name is Elia Tapia. I'm a professor at Universidad de Sonora in Hermosillo, Mexico, and I've been working for over 10 years on the Transboundary Aquifer Assessment Program, so I have some experience with the aquifers, groundwater resources.
Have we covered everyone?
Oh, okay. My name is Aaron Tews. I'm a community liaison with the Community and Intergovernmental Engagement section at AEQ.
Clem Shute, Tubac resident and a member of the Santa Cruz County Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yeah, I believe that covers our introductions. So, Commissioner, did you want?
I think there's some people online. Was that? I think that we have some very distinguished people online.
Oh, let's go through those folks online too.
I tried to do it up there and that's not.
Go ahead, anybody start.
Let's see.
If we could start with the IBWC, I know we have Frank.
I don't know why, whatever, it's just gonna be loud.
Thank you, Commissioner. Frank Fisher, Public Affairs Chief, IBWC.
Others?
And go ahead. And then we also have John Light's Mexican counterpart from the Mexican section, el ingeniero Quintanar, si gusta presentarse.
Jesus?
Good afternoon, Jesus Quintanar, the International Boundary Water Commission, Section Mexico.
And then I don't know if anybody else wants to introduce themselves from the public.
This is Francisco Zamora from Sonora Institute, and I'm driving, so I cannot put my camera on, but I'll be listening to the session. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Anybody else? Introduce yourselves, guests.
I'm Jackson Jenkins.
This is,
Sorry,
go
Claire.
ahead, Jackson.
I'm Jackson Jenkins. I'm the Director for Pima County Wastewater, a former member of this group, and I live in Tubac, and I'm a friend of many of yours, and I'm just a fly on the wall like someone else.
Hi, everyone. Claire Zogmeyer, also from Sonoran Institute, and I was hoping to be there in person today, but I have to pick up my daughter a little bit later, so I'll just be catching the first part of the meeting.
Sharon here, who's from the press.
Go ahead.
Char, you want to introduce yourself? I know you, I don't know if
Yeah.
others do.
Not at Sierra Vista, yeah.
Oh,
She's
maybe not.
muted. I see Connie Williams there.
We have a few of our staff on.
And we have, we have some more ADQ folks there. Go ahead.
Yeah, Claudia.
Good afternoon, Claudia Hill from ABQ.
Hello, everyone. Joaquin Marufo from ADQ as well.
Get to introduce yourself before you sit down.
Oh, yeah. Alex Corral from Sonora Institute. Nice to meet you.
Anyone else online want to introduce yourselves? Okay, that sounds like it wraps it up. Which says next is to go over the agenda. We have 2 presentations tonight, and they're both going to be excellent. So we will have 15 minutes for each presentation, and then some time for questions for each presenter. Any questions now?
He extended our time a little bit. Speaker really to 2 speakers.
Okay. That's
Hope
good.
that's okay, Ben.
It should be. It should be actually very good.
So before John gets started on talking about kind of the first item on the agenda, I kind of wanted to say kind of a little bit of an introduction. He's got some introductory slides that he'll be talking about, but you know, it's been some really good. The last 4 years have been really good in terms of our especially the last 2 years. Last year, the year before, 3 years. The last 3 years we've had much better budget than we've had in previous years. As many of you know, between 2010 and 2021, our average budget was about $32 million for construction for the entire border. And I don't know if you want to pull up that first slide of that presentation, Frankie, but as you can see from that slide, we manage a lot of infrastructure with that. So needless to say, we've had we had a lot of issues, right? 500 miles of levees, 2 international dams, the 2 wastewater treatment plants. We have 5 diversion dams. And so we have a lot of issues at our infrastructure. And because of the advocacy that we've gotten from communities like in Arizona, it's been really positive. The one thing that's still pending is transfer of the IOI. And of course, the corresponding funding that was requested in the legislation is still pending authorization before we can get it officially transferred. But in the meantime, we do have funding for some important improvements at the Nogales wastewater treatment plant. And that's one of the things that John's gonna be talking about. We also are ensuring that we work really well with our partners. You know, we signed the agreement with Nogales. That was also a huge step forward. And the next thing that we're also going to be working on is hopefully a minute on the Nogales excess flow and improvements that we want to make at our wastewater treatment plant. So that's kind of the vision of what we have for this year. And John, I'll let you start the discussion. I may interrupt you because there was one other thing I wanted to mention, but it slipped my mind. But we do have plans for 2025 and we do have needs for 2026. And I'm hoping, John, I didn't have a chance to look at your presentation. You can talk a little bit about what the needs are for 2026. The president's budget still has not come out. And so obviously Congress sets the budget. And so we'd like to kind of talk about what are some of those additional improvements that we're hoping to do in 2026 should the budget be approved.
I think at this point, we need to notify everyone that the meeting is being videotaped. So please don't provide any personal identification information. We also need to remind anyone who has questions in person or online to please raise your hand and wait until after presentations are completed. Okay.
Well, thank you, Ben, and thank you, Commissioner. So again, my name's John Light. I'm the Area Operations Manager for the Nogales Field Office for International Boundary Water Commission, United States Section. So I'm going to give a presentation. The first part of my presentation, the Commissioner kind of went over this first slide here, and this is some of our responsibilities along the border, some of the things that we do. Hopefully I can figure out, there we go. So these are our field offices spread along the border. So all the way from San Diego, all the way down to Mercedes, Texas, and Brownsville. So we have hydroelectric dams, we have diversion dams, we have 2 large wastewater treatment plants on the United States side. Plus we've got a joint plant down in Nuevo Laredo. That's on the Mexican side. And plus we interact with other wastewater treatment plants in Naco, Arizona and Douglas, Arizona. So there's a lot of infrastructure on the border. And we do all this with about 250 federal employees. So we're a very, very small agency, but we have a lot that we do and we take care of. As this slide shows, we have 300 authorized positions, but due to retirements and things like that, we hover right around 250 employees. And 1/3 of our employees are at or near retirement age, which means that, we're going to have a large turnover of institutional knowledge and things like that. We're going to get new people coming in with new ideas, but a lot of our institutional knowledge goes away. So those are always challenges. It's not only a challenge with us, many other agencies and private sector entities have to deal with that as well. So this is a Google image essentially of the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant. It's located in Rio Rico, Arizona. Some of you have been there, some of you have not, but you can see it's at the confluence of the Santa Cruz River and Potrero Creek / Nogales Wash. We're just to the west of that. So the plant has been there since about 1970. That's when it was relocated from where City Nogales Public Works is now, and it was relocated to its current location to allow for a larger plant and to get the plant out of the middle of the city so people don't have to smell it down there in the city. So it was moved out there, and that was along with when the original IOI was extended from the City Public Works to its current location. So what do we do with an NIWTP? What's our purpose? So we apply provisions of the 1944 Water Treaty between the United States and Mexico. And when you have a treaty, you have minutes, which are addendums to the treaty. Essentially, they're interpretations between the members of the treaty. So our applicable minutes are 206, 227, 261, 276, and 294. And this is our objective there is to protect the health and safety of Ambos Nogales residents through safe and effective international wastewater treatment plant. So our commissioner has drilled into our heads and made us realize what our job is. Our job is to save lives. And that's what it is. We save lives every single day. It might not seem like it, but we do.
Public safety, national security, that's what we do.
Yes, safety and national security as well. So that's what we do. And our commissioner has been a very strong proponent of how important we are in the things that we do. And I'm not just saying this because she's on the line listening to me and she's my boss's boss's boss, but she has done more for this agency than all the other commissioners combined. Nogales wastewater treatment plant was an afterthought before she came on board. And when she came on board, she is making us a bunch of hamsters in a wheel trying to keep up with her because she's getting us funding. She's having these projects for us that we never seen before. So she's done fantastic for it. And for the future too. So these are our parameters. So 80%, it's actually a little bit higher right now, of our inflow flow originates in Nogales, Sonora, Mexico. And the remainder is United States contribution from the city of Nogales, Arizona, from a portion of Rio Rico, Arizona, and some other small entities. Water is treated to United States Clean Water Act standards and the federal and state discharge requirements. We have permits that we have to meet at the treatment plant. Some of them are state permits and some of them are federal permits that are administered by the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. Influent from Mexico is conveyed to the treatment plant through a 9-mile international outfall interceptor. A lot of people you've heard about this IOI. We just finished up a roughly $40 million project to rehabilitate that IOI. So it was originally installed in 1968. It served its service life and we rehabilitated. So that's a project done and in the books. So we had some good work on that and some good people working on that. And we're very proud that that got done. So our treatment capacity is 14.7 more million gallons per day at the Nogales plant. And we're routinely well above capacity, ranging from 100% to 120%, resulting in no system redundancy ability. So that being above capacity, being at or above capacity, started the day that the new upgraded plant was upgraded in 2009 when it went online. So we've been running at that level since 2009. So we were upgraded in 2009 and we're a little over 75% of the way through the cycle life. Usually you have a 20-year life cycle for a treatment plant. And that's because technology changes, permit requirement changes, equipment wore out. A treatment plant is a very hard environment for equipment. So equipment wears out and you have to replace it, etc. So CIP evaluation scope. So CIP is critical infrastructure. So we contracted for a capital improvement plan for critical infrastructure. So the contractor will be performing a wastewater treatment asset management plan, called an AMP, including the Nogales plant and the South Bay plant, which is in San Diego, starting in August in 2024. Obviously, this has already started, and they've been working on it. And the AMP will
let me add something to that. Let me add something to that, because I think that's what the problem for the agency has typically been, is that we've always been in reactive mode, right? And so we created back in 2022, at the end of 2022, an asset management office and staffed it in 2023 along with hired a consultant. And I think it may be in the future a good idea to do a presentation just on the asset management effort. But basically, this is an effort where we're inventorying all of the components of all of our infrastructure, and we're putting everything on an O&M plan, right? So that we have a better source of how we develop our budget. So the first phase is the wastewater treatment plant and South Bay, and like John is talking about here, it started in 2024. That piece of the condition of the assessment, But now we're in the process of putting them on O&M plans, but as well as purchasing a software where we upload all of this information and we move to a task order type of organization. And so the idea is that the next phase, so right now it's the wastewater treatment plants is the first phase, our gauging stations, which affect the Yuma area, and then also our heavy equipment. The next phase is going to be our dams. Then we'll have our levee work, our levees, and our ports of entry and boundary markers. So all of these are going to be done in phases. It is a 5-year process. But I think we're envisioning, John, if I'm not mistaken, to have the Nogales wastewater treatment plant done by the end of this year with its O&M. Correct?
Yes. Correct, yes. So in advance of the future work, IBWC authorized contractor to conduct high-level review of both facilities, which was done, and identify critical needs to include in the current 5-year CIP projections. So this is a little bit of what they came up with. So this is what they saw, the evaluation, treatment capacity 14.7, hydraulic capacity 34 million gallons per day. So we can treat biologically 14.7. We can handle rain events up to 34 million gallons for instantaneous flows coming through. And again, it was originally constructed in 1970 with upgrades in 1990 and then 2009. The major processes are headworks with settling basin, screening, grit removal, odor control, biological treatment with 3 bioreactors, aeration blowers, and glycerin feed system, final clarifiers with 3 tanks and return sludge pumping, final effluent with 5 traveling bridge filters and ultraviolet disinfection, biosolids, rotary drum thickeners, aerobic digester, belt presses, polymer feed, and then support facilities include electrical distribution, backup generators, SCADA, buildings, roads, and levees. So this is a typical wastewater treatment plant. This one, however, is a biological nutrient removal plant. So what we do is we take ammonia, we convert it to nitrite and then to nitrate, and then we take the nitrate out, all through a biological process. The nitrate turns into nitrogen gas and goes up into the atmosphere, which is 74% nitrogen to begin with. So it's a good process. It's a biological process. We use very, very little chemicals in there in the system. We only use we use polymer for the biosolids. Other than that, our disinfection is ultraviolet. We don't use chlorine. So, and again, this is a recap. We consistently operate in 16 to 18 million gallons per day. The big thing here is we lack redundancy, making the plant vulnerable to critical equipment failures and process upsets. So what that means is redundancy means that everything that we have at the treatment plant is online all the time. So we don't have something to put, if something breaks, we don't have something to put in its place to take up the slack on that. We have to do an immediate repair as quickly as we can to try to get back up and running again. And this is where it's running into one of the projects that you're going to see here that we're doing right now. I'll get to that in just a minute, but let me go through this. Our wet weather flows routinely exceed 34 million gallons per day hydraulic capacity. The majority of that is our flows coming from Mexico. Mexico uses their sanitary sewer system as also a stormwater collection system. And so it ends up coming into the United States, and then to our treatment plant, we have to deal with it. And then the solids handling processes are inadequate for the new requirement to haul dewatered solids to a remote landfill in Tucson. Currently, high transport disposal costs can get up to $3 million annually. So this is the reasoning for some of the projects that you're going to see coming up here. So right now, this is the one where I was talking about where we don't have redundancy. So we have nothing to put online. So we have a bioreactor. We have 3 bioreactors. All 3 of them have to be online all the time. So we have to do major maintenance on the bioreactor. So a bioreactor is essentially where our bacteria do their job to oxidize BOD, convert the ammonia, etc. In order to do that, we have to create the proper conditions for that. And one of the conditions is adding air to the system. We add air through air diffusers. If any of you have an aquarium, you have your little stone down there and you see the bubbles coming up. Well, we have a whole bunch of bubbles coming up, and that gives air to the bacteria. So we have to replace those diffusers periodically. Well, they're supposed to be replaced every 7 years. They're membrane, EPDM membranes with slots of them that the air can come up through and turns into fine air. Well, there's 3,500 of those in every one of our bioreactors. In order to, typically what you do when you're going to replace those every 7 years is you take the bioreactor offline, you pump it out, and you put another bioreactor online to take up the slack. Well, we don't have another bioreactor, so we have to do this live. So we're actually going to have to hire divers to go in there and replace all 3,500 of these diffusers while the bioreactor is working. So it's a not an optimum situation to be in for us. We don't get to do the inspections that we want to do. There's a higher risk factor because divers, anytime you have divers, that's high risk. So, but we have to do that. So part of this project right now is diffuser replacement. That's bioreactor number 1. Remember, we have 2 more bioreactors after this. Right now, we're about 35% complete with the whole project. So it also included installing 2 new blowers, 4 RAS pumps, a clarifier gearbox, and it was about $1.3 million to do this project. So again, we're about 35% of the way through this. So it's currently being done. You can see the crane there. They're replacing one of the blowers on that picture there. You can see an old blower in the side over there. Another project that's currently underway is to replace influent magnetic flow meter. So magnetic flow meters are much, much, much more accurate than any other type of flow meter that's out there. Our flow meter was 35 years old and it failed. So we're having to replace it. It's a major operation. We have to bypass our headworks in order to replace this meter. But it's about $122,000, and that is currently underway. I think it's scheduled for June, the first week in June, for the actual work to begin. They're mobilizing now, ordering the parts and so forth. And again, this is all coming from monies that the commissioner was able to get for us. So this is a very large project right here. So this is the biosolids handling improvements. So one of our issues, as I brought up before, is we have to transport our biosolids to a Tucson landfill all the way from Rio Rico. That's a long trip. Due to the majority of our flow coming from Mexico and the potential for metals being in that biosolids, we're not allowed to land apply. Like a lot of plants around the country land apply their biosolids on agricultural fields. We can't take that risk on doing that because there might be a huge amount of metals in there. We went through that about 15 years ago, and we had to go and take all that biosolids off those fields because they had cadmium. We don't want to risk that again. So the point of this project is to get our biosolids extremely dry. So our current biosolids are maybe 15% solids in there, and the rest it's all water. So when we fill up a truck, we're hauling a whole bunch of water all the way up here to Tucson to put into that landfill. Well, that gets very expensive. So this project here will allow us to go from 15% solids up to 90% solids. So much less bulk, much less weight. It's more stable at that. And that's what our goal is. So this project right now it's been announced. It's out on the street for bids to come in. And I can only give you a fiscal magnitude on some of these projects because we have our own internal estimates and things of that nature, but I can't give you what our estimates are, right? Because we don't want to give an unfair advantage to anybody. So I can give you a ballpark figure, and it's a wide ballpark figure. So we anticipate anywhere from $10 to $25 million for this project. And this project will be awarded this fiscal year, and hopefully construction will start early in first quarter of FY26. Another major project that we have that's being worked on right now, the design is being worked on, and that's to add a 4th bioreactor and a 5th RAS pump and a 4th final clarifier for redundancy. So, as I said, we're having to use divers right now. Well, we don't want to ever have to do that again. So, and we want to be able to do proper maintenance. So what we're going to do is add a 4th bioreactor, not for additional capacity. We're only going to run, even if we have 4 bioreactors, we're only going to run 3 of them at a time, because we're always going to have one down for maintenance, right? And the same thing with the clarifier. So this will give us the redundancy and the ability to take systems offline, do proper maintenance on them, be a lot safer. We can do better inspections. And that is something that we are in the planning phase. Our engineers are going through this right now. So we anticipate this to be an FY26 project. It's like I said, it's in our design right now. Another one that we're working on.
So note to self, FY26 people.
Right, FY26. We have a lot of things coming. So commissioners keeping us on our toes with keeping these projects going. So
I want our work to get boring. I want our work to just get boring.
Exactly, Commissioner. So so another project that is extremely important to us and that we're working on currently right now is our headworks. So if you think back a couple of minutes, I said that in Mexico, they're using their sanitary sewer system as their stormwater collection system as well. So what comes with stormwater? A lot of sediment. And our headworks is not designed to handle a lot of sediment. So we're having a lot of damage and a lot of problems with our headworks. And what our headworks are is where the wastewater first enters the facility. It's where you handle all the physical processes. So when you have rags come in, you have bicycles come in through the pipe, you have 2x4s, whatever it may be, you have screens up there, and you have settling basins up there. You have all these things that take the inorganics out of that flow that's coming into your plant. And so during a storm event, we'll get close to 1,000 cubic yards of sediment that comes into our facility, all at, just in a matter of 3 or 4 hours. And it just overwhelms our equipment, and it destroys our screening equipment and things of that nature. So we've been limping along now for a number of years because we didn't have the funding to replace a lot of this equipment. A lot of it's, bubble gum and electrical tape put together, basically. So we have done a good job with that. Our staff's done a great job keeping things running, but we're to the point where we just can't do it anymore. So we have the funding to do to add an additional core screen, which is going to help us at the headworks, because we only have one right now, so we don't have redundancy. So if that core screen goes down, we don't have a core screen, or you have a guy up there 24 hours a day with a rake, literally raking the screens. And we're going to replace our fine screens. The fine screens take out all the fine little debris, the little plastic pieces that come in. You'll be amazed what comes in wastewater influent, a number of rags and things that makes you scratch your head how it got into the flow stream, but it's there. Adding screening compactor washer, extend conveyor. So we're in it's a little bit more, the planning phase is kind of a misnomer on that. We have a very good idea. We're doing what they call market research in the government. So we've gone out, talked to other engineers, talked to equipment vendors, finding out what is best for us, and we're putting that package together and getting ready to go out on the street with it. So fiscal magnitude, we're estimating between $1 and $2 million. So a lot of this equipment is off-the-shelf equipment, but we just need to make sure it plugs into what we have. Another one that we're working on is our clarifier number 2 and number 3 rehab. So the clarifiers have been online now for 16 years. We have to take them down. We're going to have to rebuild the gearboxes on them, do sandblasting and painting of all the metal structure, normal maintenance that we haven't been able to do in the past. So that's another project that we're doing. So most of these are actually maintenance projects. But the biosolids and the bioreactors are new construction, so to speak. So another
let me even though they're maintenance, they've gotten to a point where the lack of maintenance has turned them into capital infrastructure. Yes. I mean, some of them would have been headed in that direction, but that's the whole point of the asset management, is that we're able to maintain this so it has a longer life, right, John?
Yes, absolutely, Commissioner, absolutely. So yes, so what happens is the equipment, if due to either not being maintained or the circumstances that it's having to deal with might be not what it was designed to handle, it's worn out and you're going to have to replace it or upgrade it, etc. So that's the process that we're going through.
And then the other thing is, many of these planned projects, John, correct me if I'm wrong, please, is based on the condition assessment that was done by the consultant as part of the asset management program.
Yes, absolutely, Commissioner. So all these projects that you're seeing here are projects that were recommended by our contract condition assessment people who came in, and what they are recommending are almost identical to the same projects that we had came up with ourselves. So that we're in harmony with identifying these issues and the problems and how to make these corrections. So that makes there's a sense of satisfaction knowing that others are seeing your same issue. So the data is valid. It's not only us saying it, we have contractors that are saying the same thing. So another project is our tertiary filters rehabilitation. So we have filters at the back end of the plant. Because we use UV disinfection, we want to use filters, because if your total suspended solids get a little wacky every once in a while, your UV system can mask, the TSS can mask the UV system, not allow for disinfection. So our disinfection permit requires us, it's class A plus reuse standards, which means that there has to be 4 non-detect samples out of 7 days. So it's a really, really stringent standard for wastewater. So we have tertiary filters to help us meet that standard. However, those tertiary filters were built in 1990, so they're 35 years old. The concrete is still good, but everything else is just, worn out on the surface essentially. So we're going to take this opportunity to use the concrete basins and modernize the type of filters. The ones we have now are sand filters, or they're dual media. They're sand filters and anthracite, but they're traveling bridge filters. You can't hardly get parts for them anymore, things of that nature. So we're looking at some new technologies out there, maybe disc filters, something along those lines that will allow us actually more throughput with a smaller footprint and reuse some of the structures we already have. That fiscal magnitude is $1.5 to $2.5 million based off of some of the rough estimates we have so far. The next is our ultraviolet disinfection rehabilitation. Again, that one was installed in 2009. We're expecting $500,000 to about $1 million for that, and that's to get it up to modern standard with some new sensors and things of that nature. Process instrumentation modernization. So as technology has changed a lot from 2009 to today, right? So there's a lot of technologies out there that we want to incorporate into our treatment plant that will allow us to do much better monitoring and control of the treatment plant, and therefore be able to help us meet our permit requirements easier. Ammonia probes, nitrate probes, different things like that. That's process instrumentation that will monitor the plant more. As we all know, automation, the whole world is moving towards automation, and that's where we're trying to move as well. So we have this project on there, and again, magnitude is anywhere from $200,000 to $600,000. SCADA rehab and modernization. SCADA stands for supervisory control and data acquisition. So essentially what a SCADA system does, it's a computer system that touches everywhere in the plant. So what that can do is it records data, what your flows are doing, what your dissolved oxygen levels are. It opens valves, closes valves based on an operator inputting that data into the network. Just about every plant, I can't even think of a plant nowadays that does not have a SCADA system. It's actually a requirement of ADEQ and EPA because that's data that is just being recorded. It helps me if the plant is not operating the way that I think it should be operating. I can go back and look, they call it historian, and I can look at a week's worth of data or 2 weeks worth of data and do trending and find out, put all these things together and figure things out. Anyway, that was 2009. So just think of the computers in 2009 versus today, right? Big difference. So we have to modernize. And then we put it under miscellaneous. It's not really miscellaneous, but I would just keep on categorizing on down if I kept on going. So we have levee improvements, road improvements, ingress, egress, polymer injection, and we're looking anywhere from $1.5 to $2.5 million on those. So, what did I do, Frankie? Did I break it?
No, that's the end.
That's the end. So, sorry.
Unless you have many more millions of dollars.
Well, yeah. So, hopefully. So, I'm not at really liberty to discuss how much money we have available, but we do have large chunks of this money already in our coffers, so to say, ready to spend and obligate. So we're working on getting that obligated quickly. As I said, the sludge dryer is already out on the street. Bids should be being received. I forget when the cutoff date is. It's coming up fairly quickly though. And then we'll review the bids and hopefully we get some, some good responses on there. If not, then we'll have to go forward with some mods or something like that.
So
yeah.
you'll see a press release go out. We'll probably, give the opportunity to Congressman Cisco Mani to provide us a quote. He's been so helpful in our budget appropriations process. But yeah, no, this is very exciting news for sure.
It is. This is, again, this is new to the agency. We usually don't have this kind of funding and support. So we're trying to keep up with the commissioner. It's a tough job, but we're trying to keep up with her. But again, so it's fantastic. It's nice to see this happening. So if you look at the ranges that I put in, you're looking at top range of over $60 million. This plant, when it was expanded in 2009, was $65 million. So this is a huge amount of expense that we're putting into this treatment plant to bring it up to modern standards and to rehabilitate it and rehab it. So this plant is extremely important. We're the only treatment plant in the country that does what we do. San Diego does something different. They treat just Mexican flow, and they don't treat to the same standards they're not a BNR plant, so they don't treat to the same standards that we treat to. Nuevo Laredo only treats Mexican flow down in there. So we're the only treatment plant that actually is truly international, where we treat flow from Mexico and from the United States, treat it and discharge it into Santa Cruz River and create that fantastic variance downstream.
Yeah, that beautiful area. Beautiful.
Yep. So we're very, very proud of that. So I guess opening up for questions. Anybody have any questions?
Before we take questions from John, I'd like to remind everybody to sign up and sign your sign-up sheet clearly so you can receive notifications. And what do we do for folks online?
I can pass it around. I'll send something out to them as well.
Okay.
I'll put it in the chat.
And we have a QR code, so if you actually scan the QR code and put your information, you make it easier on our staff that they don't mistype your name.
Questions for John?
Sure.
Be clear that all the improvements, everything was supposed to be finished in fiscal year 2026, or is that over the?
So it depends on how they're staged. So we're starting some of the improvements now in FY25, right? And so we're obligating money that for FY25, but when we obligate the money, you still might have a year's worth of preparing for when the project actually begins. So some of them you might not actually see. Hopefully you'll see dirt turn before 26, but there may be delays where it's in actually 26. So it's 25 and 26. So 26 projects may carry over into 27. Exactly. So, and we're trying to, Commissioner is busy talking to all the, congressmen and senators and OMB and everybody she can talk to, trying to not make this just one pool of money that we just got for this time period, but to make this sustainable. That's why we're working on that asset management. So we can show the people in Washington, this is real hard data. We're going to need, based off of the information we have, we're going to need X number of dollars in FY29. And this is hard data. This isn't just, John, guesstimating. This is hard data. So that's how it kind of works. So.
And what I would add to what John just said was that from a budget standpoint, obviously $60 million, is probably a range between 40 and 60 in there. If we get the funding, then we would move forward on procuring, because we want to procure with funds available, so that if we procure with subject to availability of funding, it could definitely negatively impact the procurement process, because we may not get as good bidders as we would like, because they don't know if the project's going to move forward, and it costs money to put a proposal together. But the idea is that if we get, depending on what we get in 26, then we'll allocate funds. This project and our Amistad Dam are our two priority projects. South Bay is already fully funded. These are our two priorities right now.
I had a question. It may be more of an ADQ question, John. Years ago, I was utility regulator of electricity. You always wanted to have some kind of margin, 20% or whatever. You said you have no redundancy. Are there any regulations or guidance on how much redundancy you should have from EPA or ADQ, which follows that?
Right. So that's a very, very good question. So traditionally, and it is ADQ regulations as well, that once you reach 85% of your capacity, you have to start planning for a capacity expansion. Okay. And we all understand that. I mean, the reason for that. In our case, the day we went online, we were already at capacity and going above capacity. So we're not looking for a capacity expansion. We're looking to have Mexico actually meet what the treaty calls for, what the minute calls for, which is 9.9 million gallons per day. So if Mexico would meet that 9.9 million gallons per day, then we would have that buffer that we're wanting. So that's the approach that we're taking. An expansion of capacity would get into much more negotiations with Mexico. It would open up the treaty minutes, require a new treaty minute, et cetera. So our first approach is try to reduce flows to 9.9 at the border, and that should give us the buffer that we're looking for. But yeah, 85% is the traditional number that most people look for. Some states require 70%, as low as 70%. But again, in June of 2009, we were already at 100%. So day we went online.
Question from folks online?
Jackson's got his hand up.
Yeah, I didn't hear. Did you just ask if, can I ask a question? This is Jackson Jenkins.
Please. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just from our experience at Pima County, every day I'm still surprised at how high the bids come in for our capital project program as well. And so I'm just curious, John, if you guys have already prioritized your projects. It's great to say 60 million is the upper end, and your funding is whatever your funding is, so you'll spread it out over whatever time frame. But what if 60 million comes in at 75 million or some other blasphemous amount of money? Are you already prioritized so you know which projects you will attempt first? I'm just curious.
Yes, we have, Jackson. That's a very good point. We have prioritized. Right now, our priority is our sludge dryer, because that has direct fiscal impacts on us every year. So we have the other projects we have prioritized, and we discuss it about once a month. We have a group meeting where we discuss if the priorities are still the same or whether they need to change. And it also depends on the length that some of the projects may take. Some projects may take longer to actually see to the end. So we're trying to get the quicker projects as done as quickly as we can. But yes, we've seen the same thing where estimates come in much higher than what we thought that they should be. So.
And Jackson, just to add to that, that's one of the things that we take into account when talking to Congress is having some carryover in that specific cost center for those types of arrangements, but also to have some carryover as well for projects to get started in the next fiscal year, because we know we never get our budget in time. It's always like 6 months or more into the fiscal year. So we definitely look from a cash flow perspective as to when the funding needs to be coming to the IBWC. And we definitely engage with the regional office on that. Is that helpful?
Yeah, very, very much. Thank you guys for your answers.
Any other questions from folks online? How about in person?
Yeah. How does all this relate to the life of the facility, which you say is 75% done?
Right.
So is there ever a point where that happens and you blow it up and start over, or how's that work?
Well, I'm sure some people would hope for that, but usually these treatment plants, unless there's a major regulation change where you have to meet a whole new permit that you just can't do with your current infrastructure. Usually these plants, there's plants out there today that were built back in the 50s. And they've just been refreshing them as they go forward. So that's essentially what we're doing. The only new, per se, concrete that we're pouring in all these projects that we're looking at right now is for the 4th bioreactor and the 4th clarifier. The rest of these are basically equipment replacements. So modernizing the equipment. So that's how you can keep up with new regulation changes for the most part, unless there's a whole new biological process that you need to do. You can keep it going, but usually don't start all over unless there's like with our old plant from the 1990s to the new plant in 2009, we had to have all this new tankage and things like that because we had to start removing ammonia, and you physically could not do that with the footprint of what we had before. So we try to make them last. We try to get 100 years out of our concrete. So hopefully by the time that comes around, the concrete's worn out, I'm going to be long gone.
You're worn
I'm worn out. So
I have a couple questions for you, John.
Sure.
The RAS pump, what does the RAS stand for?
Again, I'm sorry. I've been a wastewater guy for 45 years, so I use terminology that's probably not in everyday use. So RAS pump stands for return activated sludge pump. And so what that is, the fundamental aspect of modern day wastewater treatment is called return activated sludge. So an activated sludge plant, what that does is you create the environment to grow bacteria. Well, you want to keep the bacteria a certain age, because if the bacteria is too young, it's like a bunch of kids at the buffet. They're just stuff going everywhere, blah, blah, blah. If the bacteria is too old, it's like the older folks at the buffet. They're real slow going through there. So you want kind of middle-aged, right? Because what happens is that bacteria, if you keep it a certain age, it's when it's in the bioreactor, it's eating up all that BOD, oxidizing it, right? Then we send it to the clarifier where it all settles down, and then the clear water goes off the top. Well, you suck off some of that sludge, that's called the return activated sludge, and you send it back to that bioreactor again so it can start working again. It's nice and hungry again, right? All those bugs are. And so they start eating again. So it's a constant cycle. So they're very, very important pumps. Without those pumps, we couldn't do what we do. So
Thank you, John.
Yep.
The other question, and I think I know the answer, but I gotta ask it, is the SCADA system also seems to be a good diagnostic tool for you?
Yes. Yes. So that's how we interface with the treatment plant for the most part. So from a SCADA system, I can tell everything that's going on in the treatment plant. So we don't do this because some of our security regulations, but a lot of treatment plants, they'll have an operator who's on call, right? And he'll take a laptop computer with him home, and he can, from his house, open that computer up and tell exactly what's going on with the treatment plant, make adjustments. You know, if there's a problem, he'll know what it is. He might be able to, you know, turn something on, take something offline to adjust for it. So all the data goes in there. We're able to interface with it. It's telling us everything that we need to know about that treatment plant to keep it running. And it does it automatically as well. So we set the parameters for what it needs to be, and it will take care of the rest. We're keeping it where those parameters are.
Does it have some triggers, where if it gets out of tolerance and something,
Yes.
it alerts you?
Yes, so that's one of the key factors too. So we only have people at the treatment plant during the day, 7 days a week, but during the day. At night, there's nobody out of the treatment plant. But the SCADA system monitors the plant, and if something gets out of parameter, it will alarm us, and then we can have somebody go in and actually respond to what the alarm is. So that's typically how plants like that work. Although, I mean, Jackson, we're Jackson, Pima County, they have staffing 24 hours a day. We don't, because we're just trying to be as automated as possible. So.
Great answers. Anybody else have any questions for John?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
The scale is really aggressive. Are you looking at designing and then building, or do you like doing like a design build procurement?
Right, that's part of the planning phase that we're doing right now to figure out which one would be quicker and most cost effective for us. So we have engineers, we have a design team in there, but sometimes it's more cost effective to do a design build. And that may be the approach that we take on there, but we haven't made that decision on some of the projects yet.
I had a question, John. You said that you'd like to get the treatment from south of the border down to the treaty 9.9.
Right.
Suppose that you made a decision that you'd like to either keep it where it is now or grow it.
Mhm.
How much advanced time would you need to basically, figure out how to
To
expand
put the
your
equipment in.
plant?
Typically with luckily in our situation, there's a lot of land mass out there, vacant land. So if the commissioner and everybody agreed, hey, we want to add another 5 million gallons to this plant and keep the flows high, it wouldn't take that long to do that. There's certain key places at the plant that need to be upgraded. And I would just, off the cuff, again, this is just as John's guesstimate, so whatever value that has, I would say you could probably, if you were aggressive with it, you could probably put that infrastructure in 2 years.
So, perhaps a dangerous comment, but, is the commissioner still on?
Yep.
It's really wonderful.
Yes, I'm still on.
So it's wonderful to see you as an engineer, because most of the time I see her, it's in her policy role. And so I see that engineering background just coming through here, which is wonderful. But what I want to say, that's the dangerous part, is that my understanding is there are all kinds of agreements on what Mexico pays for the treatment. So if you start talking about permanently increasing the capacity and you're not changing the agreement, which you alluded to, John, I
Right.
think,
Right.
earlier, that you would have to really go back and renegotiate
Yes.
some things.
Yes.
You got to look at that other financial side and the institutional side of this as well, because it's more than just an engineering problem
Right.
or issue. The other thing is I find it interesting, I'll just say interesting, because when those alisos came online, all the talk was about Mexico not sending as much as it had been, when it was at that lower level. And now they're sending way more. My question, what's going on with Los Alisos? But that's for another day.
Well,
anyway, just very interesting from kind of the institutional side
right.
of things as well as the engineering.
So Los Alisos is at maximum capacity right now. Plus Mexico is exceeding the 9.9 by about 3.5 million gallons per day. So Mexico has expanded more than anybody's wildest dreams recently, and their primary focus is to get potable water to their residents. Right, the sewage collection, sewage infrastructure is a secondary priority for them. So, luckily, in their case, that's why we have the excess flows, because they have some place to send it. They're sending it to us. It's not the optimum situation, but it is someplace. I'd rather it come to us and be more of a burden on us to have to treat than seeing it running down the streets, in the wash or something like that. So it's not optimum, but it's working. There are plans in Mexico, and we can get into this as we get more information. There are plans to expand Los Alisos some more so that they can keep some of their flow over there and also help them with their expansion. So
one of the things that I wanted to just add with this discussion, Sharon, is the fact that the raising of the profile of the agency on the U.S. side has also raised the profile of the agency on the Mexican side and the need to deal with this issue, right? And so that has brought additional funding for Los Alisos to get additional modules done. It's also brought more attention to possibly setting up public-private partnerships that I can't really get into much detail on with regards to the value of this water. And so I really think there's some exciting things that are going to come to this region that are going to be different from anywhere in the United States, at least from an international perspective. Would you agree on that, John?
Oh, absolutely, Commissioner. I think people are going to be very happy as we move forward here. There's some very positive things that are going to be happening in the area down there, and it's going to benefit everybody. So I'm glad to be part of this. My hair is getting grayer and grayer every day, and I'm getting closer to retirement. But
let me tell you, John did not retire because of me. So
right,
because we're a team, and we care about this community,
and we're gonna get it done because, as I said, we languished for a very long time, and having Commissioner Henar is just it was answer to a lot of prayers. She's done fantastic work. As many of you know who've worked with her for a long time. She is a ball of energy. I'm having a hard time keeping up, but I'm trying. So I'm trying.
And we're the same age, John. We're the same age. I'm like, what are you?
Right. So, yeah.
I think we had one more question from Mayor Maldonado.
Hello, Commissioner. How are you? I think we've done a big improvement on all the advancements we've been doing and all that. I think, I talked to the commissioner in the past. The idea of trying maybe increasing capacity would probably be the smartest thing to do because, our northern two-back, Rio Rico and everybody north of us can use that extra flow that comes about. And, I think it's a lot easier to say that, if we move, then wait for Mexico to do what they want to do. You know, they tend to do things a lot slower, and you know, we lived it. Sometimes they don't compile to their commitments, and I think it's something that you know, IBWC should look into the increase for the long run. The other thing is, you know, I know there's talks about the water. I won't get into that, but the other thing is the sludge. You know, I've been talking to people, but now that you guys are looking at that dryer, I think there's things we could do with that sludge.
Absolutely.
Instead of, you know, moving it north and disposing it. I think there's processes to do with that sludge that can help the county, the city, in either, you know, sidewalks or streets and stuff like that. I don't know if you had heard about that, but there is alternatives to use sludge. And obviously the advantage would be that you already are looking at putting the dryer.
Right. That saves money for us and for the city.
Yeah. So process after that would probably be something very wise to look into. You know, I'm pretty sure between all three entities, and you know, if you're going to save, you know, whatever it is of the 3 million, and whatever we could do to work together and take advantage of that sludge and put it in use.
Right.
One question, because you had mentioned earlier that you know, agricultural, you couldn't use it because of the metals and stuff like that. But is it okay to put it on the streets?
That I don't have an answer for, Mayor. I mean, that's something that we could definitely investigate.
I think, you know, because I was in the water talks up in San Diego, and the gentleman said, you know, that once it goes through that dryer, that metal thing, it becomes usable for the streets.
Right. And concretes and things like that.
Yes.
That's what I heard.
And it's, you know, cost effective, you know, concrete like this and the sludge with its concentrated way lower.
It becomes inert at that point.
Yeah.
Locked in, contained.
So, you know, I think that's something we could talk about. And did you know that the train line is about to put 2 or 3 more lines next to the one they have there?
I did not know that. I've heard that for quite a while, but I didn't know if they actually had concrete.
I actually had a meeting 2 or 3 months ago, and they're planning to put 2 more lines of rail right there where they have the inspection point.
I'll never be able to leave work then. The trains will always be blocking.
Yeah. So they plan to have 2 to 3 trains there.
Okay.
So it's something. I don't know if you know Omar Monge. Omar is Union Pacific in Tucson.
Yeah, I've talked to Omar a couple of times.
I think it's something, you know, we got to start talking to him because
Yeah,
that would kill you.
Oh yeah, we wouldn't be able to never leave. You're gonna have to build me a house there.
No retirement.
No retirement.
But you know, last time I talked to him, that's what their thoughts is, putting 2 more lines, inspection lines, because you know, I've been fighting with the rail about, you know, because they're going to increase from 3 to 5 trains a day to 18 to 20.
Okay, yeah, we might want to, I'll talk to you some more, Mayor, and I might schedule a meeting with Union Pacific. And
thank you for those insights.
Absolutely.
I think we still got a couple questions for you, John.
Yes, sir.
One follow-up, and I don't know if this is an issue within the treatment plant itself.
Right.
And I remember hearing, I thought, both you and Jaime saying there is no PFAS treatment technology that was available for the treatment plants. And I don't know if you got a fix for that, or whether you need a fix.
Right. So currently we do have PFAS in our biosolids, and most treatment plants, that's where the PFAS is. 90% of the PFAS is going to be in your biosolids, and 10% is going to be in your effluent discharge. PFAS treatment, there's a lot of technologies, emerging technologies that are coming out right now. Everybody in the country is looking at this. The biosolids treatment, there's some very, very interesting things coming out that actually Pima County is working on right now that I need to talk to Jackson about to see if we can maybe partner up on that and get involved with that as well. So the work, I just went to a seminar on some of that. And so if that works the way they anticipate it to work, it's going to be fairly low cost. It's going to be easy to do and be able to get the PFAS off. But it is a recognized problem. We recognize it. But to be honest with you, we're in the same boat as everybody else at the moment. We don't want it. The best thing for PFAS is source control of that. It's a little bit difficult for us because we're dealing with a foreign country. And again, they have their priorities versus our priorities. So, but it is something that's on our radar. But that's not included in this biosolids management that we're working on right now, because everything is in its infancy. The traditional is run it through activated carbon. You can't run sludge to activated carbon very well. It doesn't work that well. So there's, again, Pima County's got some smart folks working on this right now. So hopefully we'll be able to partner with them.
I think there are no more questions for John. So we'll move on to our next presentations.
And I'm sorry for taking your time, Sharon.
Before Marilena, I hope you're not leaving us, but if you need any support on senators, congressmen, federal or state, feel free to, keep on working with me, and I appreciate everything you do.
Well, so a couple of critical timelines that will be coming forward will be once the president's budget comes out, and then seeing how IBWC is kind of impacted. Our job is to support the president's budget, but if you disagree with what the needs that are being in there, that are being portrayed within the president's budget, then that would be your avenue for advocacy. And of course, if asked, kind of what are the needs of this region, how we pull all that together. I know our vision is to actually have a meeting of all the citizens forums, chairpersons at this. I really look forward to it. I'm hoping, Frankie, you can talk about I know some people are going to be terming out. We're going to be opening up our applications process for new citizens board members. And he'll talk about that so that we can really continue to advocate for membership. I want to thank all of the citizens forum members. Your feedback is really critical to us as far as achieving the goals of the agency, and setting a good strategic plan. I'm really grateful for all of the advocacy, but also for the interaction that we have here as well. And then finally, I have to recognize the mayor. The mayor, Maldonado, has been instrumental in building the relationship between IBWC and ourselves. As you know, we had a very contentious relationship with the city of Nogales. I think you guys were suing us. In fact, when I started at the IBWC, if I'm not mistaken, right? I've kind of put that behind me, so I don't think about it.
That wasn't me.
But Mayor Maldonado has been instrumental in healing that relationship. And let me tell you, in San Diego, the path has been that we treat more of Mexico's sewage precisely because it puts more control within. It puts more of our defense mechanisms on the U.S. side, and it gives us more control. Yes, it costs us, but it's up to the decision of the community and the state to decide what they want to control as the U.S. government. So I just wanted to also provide that insight that as far as what's happening in San Diego as well. But I'm still here.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Don't charge tariff on the sword line.
A tariff on wastewater.
All right. Well, let's proceed to our next presentation. I want to introduce Dr. Sharon Megdal. She's the director of this Water Resources Research Center at the university, and Elia Tapia, who is at the professor at the University of Sonora, and I believe an alumni of the University of Arizona, as myself. And so they will provide a joint presentation on the Transboundary Aquifer Assessment Program that we, for the longest time in my career, we just called it TAP. Yeah.
He knows that, this is my room. I teach my graduate class here. I usually do it up there. But I've been looking at how the camera's set up, and I'm not sure why the podium is there because I know how it's usually set up by John. So you're not gonna worry about seeing me, except I'm gonna sit down here so that I know I'll show up at the end of the table, because that's not how we usually do things. But thank you and really welcome. We're pleased. And Frankie, when you reached out to us about possibly holding this meeting, I think John may have suggested it, and we're very pleased to do it. So we welcome you. And I'm gonna go over, I only have 8 slides because last March, a year ago, I went through a lengthy overview of TAP. And many of you were there, not necessarily all of you, and some were there or were not here. And I'm not going to repeat all that. If somebody would like a more detailed overview, again, I can do that, but we don't have time. But I do want to talk a little bit about the Water Center and who we are so that you are aware of us, not only in the context of TAP. And then I also want to explain why Elia came to be here, because yesterday, it was just Monday yesterday. This already seems like a very long week. But it was Monday that I reached out to Elia to let her know about this meeting because I wasn't sure if she was on the list. And was she going to be able to be on? Because I knew there were going to be questions about something I'll mention here. And she said, well, I'm on break this week and the family wanted to come up to Tucson. She lived here. She is a product of the University of Arizona PhD program in Air and Land Resource Sciences. She worked here at the Water Center. It's like, well, what could be better? Because I couldn't handle the questions that John Combo might ask about her work. So she's here. So I'm going to go through a couple of slides really quickly. Elia can talk very, very quickly, but you're probably not going to have time for all those slides that you prepared. So again, we're here if there's a desire to do some more. So here we are, usually I'm not hosting a group here, and I have a picture of our building, which is the old Boy Scouts building. We're slightly off campus, which is why you could all get free parking and not have to worry about that. So that's a real advantage for us. And, the Boy Scouts motto, be prepared. I'd like to point out that that's a good building for a group working on water to be in. The Water Resources Research Center bridges the academic and non-academic communities. We do applied research. There's some listing of some of the things we do. We're an extension center. We do a lot of engagement, particularly with rural communities. We work across all the different water using sectors, all different geographic scales. We do a lot through partnerships, including on our conference. And, we've got Ty here from HDR, who's a sponsor. Again, we appreciate on our conference and last year. And so we work with everybody who will work with us, including ADQ and everybody. And everything is intertwined in terms of what we do. We in 2024 celebrated 60 years as the federally authorized Water Resources Research Institute for the state of Arizona. Back in 1964, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Water Resources Research Act and established centers, institutes in each of the states. Now there are 54, some of the territories, Washington, D.C., to work on educating the next generation of water researchers and professionals doing research on important water quantity and quality issues. And so we administer a small grants program and participate in a larger competitive national grants program. The federal funding funds a good portion of what we call information transfer. That's what they call it at the federal level. And so we do things like our weekly wave, our water webinars, our annual conference, and other publications. And it's this status that connects us to the Transboundary Aquifer Assessment Program. Because when that was established back in 2006 by the federal government, the Congress signed by the president, it was a program established as a partnership on the U.S. side between the Department of Interior, particularly the U.S. Geological Survey, and the Water Resources Research Institutes of Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico. So this federal status is why we're part of this, and we were written in to the authorizing legislation that way. California did not participate. If anybody wants some of the history, I have a screenshot of the reflections essay that I wrote after I provided testimony on reauthorization in October 2023. I mentioned that at my last presentation. And I answered some questions that were friendly questions from Representative Siscomani, and some of that history is back there. Okay, just a couple things about what we do. I already mentioned, when I greeted you, our annual conference. Last year, I addressed this group right after our conference, like a week later. Last year it was in March. This year it's coming up May 20th and 21st. And that photo was taken after Governor Hobbs gave her keynote, and then we sat down and did some Q&A. And we were really honored to have her as a keynote luncheon speaker. And we just found out today that she's accepted our invitation again this year. So we're super excited. We've also invited Governor Durazo of Sonora. And so we're hoping he will come as well. And this is all about borders. Our conference this year, Shared Borders, Shared Waters. It is about the border with Mexico, but it's also about shared borders with indigenous communities and other states, and even within the state of Arizona. So we have a diverse set of speakers. Joaquin was part of our large conference advisory committee, and he's one of our moderators. And so please come. If you want to come in person, we'd love to have you. It does require registration, but we also have free Zoom because we are trying to get to as many people. We'll have interpretation on the Zoom in Spanish. And so, the more the better. We put out publications. I put up the Cochise County as opposed to the Santa Cruz County. I probably brought that with me last year of our county fact sheet. We put out an arroyo based on the prior year's conference. So in 2026, our arroyo will be all based on the shared borders, shared waters. And then there's a screenshot of my reflections essay when I presented testimony back in October. I provided information in the last slide deck, and I'm happy to provide that again if there's interest in what was in that legislation. It got introduced in the House. It got out of the House Natural Resources Committee. The Senate introduced exactly the same bill, but it didn't advance. It didn't make it through. Part of it on the House side had to do with the level of appropriations being requested. That bill is still very important to us. Not only do we want to be authorized and get some appropriations over time, but also in Arizona, and Elia's, what she covers will be related to that. We were restricted in the original legislation to only look at 2 priority aquifers, the Santa Cruz and the San Pedro. And we want to have the ability, like the other states involved in looking at other aquifers. And we've got the support of the Department of Water Resources and CAP and others, as long as we don't mess with the Yuma aquifer, the Yuma Basin, because that's so connected to the Colorado River and has its own, ecosystem of dealing with that. So we've been working and in communication with Representative Siscomani's office. My counterpart in New Mexico has been working with Representative Stansbury's office to again have bipartisan support for the introduction. So we're hoping that something will get introduced possibly as early as May. And there's some work being on the Senate side with Senator Kelly's office and Senator Cornyn of Texas to also have that be bipartisan. We have a lot of good stuff on our website. I thought I'd just put screenshots of because I'm not going to be able to talk about everything, but everything related to TAC is on our website, and we do have a Spanish language Transboundary Aquifer Assessment Program website as well. So now this gets me to the transition to Elia. We've written a lot of papers. Part of what we do is do analyses and so forth. I'm not so much the technical analyst, but I play other roles in this. Elia has been working on this actually since she was a master's student at the University of Sonora, and then came over here and worked on it. And a lot of her dissertation was connected, not all of it, but most recently, she's led the formulation of this article that was published earlier this year on how do you go about prioritizing additional aquifers for study. I mean, the original legislation specified the Santa Cruz, San Pedro, and over in the Waco, Bolson, and Mesilla in the Texas, New Mexico, Chihuahua area. And so this is something that she took on her own and came up with a system for prioritization. She just gave a webinar here. We sponsor these water webinars. Just hosted one at noon today, hosted one on Friday on advanced water purification for Phoenix, Scottsdale, and Tucson. We've got one coming up for Earth Day at 9 o'clock in the morning on a new book that just came out about PFAS, written by 2 journalists for The Hill, environmental journalists. And so we try to bring things forward to the public. These are webinars, they're open to anybody. And Elia, Ben, you are on the webinar, and I know John watched the recording. And so when Elia said she'd be here, like I said earlier, it's like, great, I don't have to answer questions on this, you can. And so with that, I'm gonna just, that was the flyer for the webinar. It is recorded. We post with permission all of our webinars and slide decks online. So I'm gonna turn it over to Elia and let her talk. And
Okay.
well, I think so. Why don't you come down at the end? Because I think anybody watching on the screen, if they have the screen on, they'll be able to see you here.
Okay, all right. Well, hello, everyone. Dr. Megdal, thank you for having me here. She knows that I only need an excuse and some free time to be able to get here. So, like,
By the way, is it okay if I take a picture of the group? We don't have your slides up, John, so if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right, good. Go ahead, Elia.
All right, so I'm going to be talking about this prioritization effort for transboundary aquifers, and we know that groundwater is really important for the border communities of the U.S. and Mexico. We know that in some places it's the sole source for water resources, so it's used for domestic purposes, for agricultural purposes, industrial, environmental uses. So groundwater is important. We live in states, Arizona and Sonora, where they're semi-arid. So it's dry, and groundwater it's important for the well-being of this people. So the purpose of this study was to prioritize aquifers based on available information that can tell us the story about the aquifers and the level of stress that they're into. So, next, or should I go? Oh, thank you. So this study uses a multi-criteria approach for transboundary aquifer prioritization. These techniques are widely used for supporting decision-making, and lately they help supporting water-related decision-making. So they help to assign, they help decision makers to assign relative importance for weights to multiple criteria and are particularly suitable for integrating diverse factors. So if I want to study an additional aquifer, let's say that through the Transboundary Aquifer Assessment Program, we have been studying 2 main aquifers in the Arizona-Sonora border region, the Santa Cruz Aquifer and the San Pedro Aquifer. But we know that there are additional transboundary aquifers within the Arizona-Sonora border. So let's say I have limited resources and I really need to keep studying these groundwater resources, which are invisible and which are like, it's really, we still don't know enough about groundwater resources. Like there aren't enough studies, and as I mentioned, we really depend on groundwater. So if I have limited resources, where would I start? Which aquifer would I select to keep studying more? So there's these techniques that allow us to consider different factors and multi-criteria assessment. Sorry, next please. I'm like, it's not a PowerPoint, it's a PDF. Sorry. So for the selection or for this prioritization, we use different criteria to try to select which aquifer should or could benefit from assessment, from transboundary aquifer assessment. So we took into account population density, for example, because it's related to water demand and potential pressure on aquifer resources. We also, for each aquifer, assess the transboundary confidence, which categorizes aquifer based on the certainty of cross-border connections. So we know that there are like different transboundary aquifers. Sometimes they call them border aquifers because they are within the border, but we don't really know if there are groundwater flows within one country to the other. So for us, it was really important to be sure that groundwater was flowing from one place to another. So population density, number one, how many people live within the region and within the aquifer boundary. And then the next criteria was transboundary confidence. Are there groundwater flows here? Yes, no, I'm not sure. That was also an answer. Then groundwater availability. Is groundwater available within the region? Like if we go and develop a water balance, where we calculate everything that gets into the system and everything that gets out of the system, would I get a positive water balance, a negative water balance, or is everything in equilibrium? So we try to find all these different criteria that together can tell us or give us an idea of the status or if they're in a critical status or if they are under stress. So in addition to groundwater availability, we also consider transboundary groundwater flows because it's not like once we identify that there is a transboundary groundwater flow, it's not the same to say that the flow is 100 millions of cubic meters per year than 5 millions of cubic meters per year. So the more flows, we gave more priority to those aquifers. Then we also consider the number of wells because it was assumed that a higher number of wells suggested greater extraction under the different aquifers. We also consider aridity. We use different satellite images to identify changes in the coverage of the area, and that helps us to see if the aquifer regions, what was on the surface of the aquifer, of course, which would be facing, it was getting more arid within time. And also we consider irrigated lands that measure areas irrigated by groundwater. So if we go to the next slide, please, I'm going to show you one by one everything that was considered for this assessment. So these are the transboundary aquifers, border aquifers. It depends on the book that you open. It depends on the article that you open and your source of information. The boundaries that are presented are based on the IRAC map of 2021, which is also based on Rosario Sanchez and others, 2021, and different articles from Sanchez.
Yeah, IGRAC is the International Groundwater Assessment Center, I believe. It's part of UNESCO and the UN, and they're based in the Netherlands, and they take and compile information provided to them, and every 3 years they put out a new map. So the first time they even kind of included the Santa Cruz and San Pedro was in their 2009 map, because I provided them with information based on the original TAP authorization. And now Rosario Sanchez, who's a partner in this, has done extensive work in characterizing the geological and aquifer conditions along the border.
Okay, thank you. So, as I mentioned before, we need to know more about our groundwater resources. And this information is relevant to try to understand the groundwater use within the region. In the case of population density, as you can see, we took the boundary of each aquifer, and then we identified the different cities, the different towns, and we counted the population that lies within the aquifer boundary. So if you try to find maps like this online, you won't find them, because you need to use like ArcGIS or GIS tools to be able to place the aquifer and the towns. sometimes you will get descriptions within a paper or publication where they say, oh, this covers the municipality of Agua Prieta. This covers the municipality of Nogales, but the municipality is an area that can be cut in half or partially cut by an aquifer. So this study, it just considered the towns that are within the aquifer. So it's really important, and it's like the process that we develop, the process that we present, it helps us for decision-making purposes, but also all the steps that we're taking into account for getting to the answer, they are also important and relevant for decision-making purposes. Actually, knowing how many people live within this region is important because you can relate that to groundwater use. So that's a population, well, it's actually, you're just seeing the population, the density would be a population divided by the area. So if we go to the next slide, you'll be able to see more of this maps that were created in order to obtain the population density again. And then you can see, we had some questions. I received an email, I think, I don't remember if you received it as well. They were asking us about the San Bernardino Valley. They were like, oh, there's so, like, I can't believe that you have like a few people within this region, because you're mentioning that it covers the Agua Prieta municipality and it covers also Douglas. It covers the Douglas County subdivision. Yes, it does, but it's not like the aquifer boundary does not go into the town of Douglas. That's why population is not as high in the San Bernardino Valley. And then if you go see Douglas, Agua Prieta, that's where you will find more population. So this was really interesting for the public. So we received many questions about population, about wells, about the different items that we considered for selecting or for developing this rank of aquifers that could benefit from assessment, from transboundary aquifer assessment. So we can go to the next slide to see more of this information. I mentioned as well that we took into account transboundary confidence for prioritizing aquifers, because, well, a higher priority would go to an aquifer where we are sure about the groundwater flows. Like if we are sure that groundwater flows from one side to another side, it means that we should give it a higher priority. And then if we are like, there's a level of confidence that says some. So we have some confidence about this transboundary groundwater flow. So we would give it like less priority. And then if there's limited confidence about the groundwater flows, they would receive like less priority. So we can move to the next slide. I see that I'm starting to speak faster. So we're doing great. So then transboundary groundwater flows. We need to know like the amount of flows that goes from one country to another. So this information, like we search online for different sources, and we know that there's like institutional asymmetries between both the US and Mexico. And you also see the asymmetry is like the word that describes everything in transboundary aquifer assessment. Like everything's different, units and areas and ways of measurement. So we were able to find these documents that you open them and you will find a calculation for transboundary groundwater flows. We know, of course, that sometimes there's limitations within these studies, but it's still a tool that can be used and can give us an idea of the groundwater flows within the aquifer region. And I can find this study for each aquifer within the border region of Sonora and Arizona. And if I want to study this in Chihuahua, if I want to study this in another state, I will find them and I will find a calculation for transboundary groundwater flow. So it was really important that the data, that the information that we used for this decision making, it was something that we could find within the whole border region. And that the data was homogeneous. Like you will always find it the same way, calculated the same way. That's why these studies were useful for that. So we use transboundary groundwater flows from the CONAGUA studies. And then if we go to the next slide, we will see as well the groundwater availability, also taken from the same study. So at the end of this water availability studies from CONAGUA, there's a water volume calculation. If it's positive, it tells you that you're good. If it's negative, it says this aquifer has deficits. And then they create these maps with green and red, where red is the aquifer with deficit. So if one of our aquifers was identified as an aquifer with deficit, according to CONAGUA, we automatically gave it a higher priority. So I think that again, this was really useful because those studies are available for the whole country, not only the whole border. So we can move on to the next slide so that we can keep seeing what else was considered to get this prioritization. So the next criterion is groundwater wells. So it was important to identify or how do I frame this? Groundwater wells, we were actually searching for either groundwater levels or groundwater use, but we couldn't find it like in both sides of the border. That information was not available. There is information, for example, through Mexico, from the Public Registry of Water Rights. If you go to their official webpage, which is part of CONAGUA's webpage, you can find like all the wells that are registered and should be like every well should be registered because CONAGUA grants the right to use groundwater in the country. So you can find the wells, you can find the use, you can find if they're used for agricultural purposes, industrial, etc. And then you can find the concession. The concession it should work similarly to water rights. So we know how much water they can use, but we don't really have information of how much water they actually use. So we have information about concession, which water right, but we couldn't really use it. And the same with the United States wells, we were able to find them. We did find groundwater levels for the US portion. And some of them, they had information about the pumping, the groundwater pumping, but it wasn't enough. We found that some wells had a lot of zeros. We found them, and then I have this information that was provided. It's true. Sometimes you see zero, and it's like, how is it possible that you're not using water, and that like 50% of the wells that you have here are not using water? So at the end of this research, we end up using just groundwater wells, assuming that the more wells, the more groundwater use and the more stress. So time gone.
Well, no, I'll leave it up to the co-chairs.
Okay.
You're out of time.
Okay, so that's also information that was gathered for the whole Arizona border region. The paper is available online. Also, the webinar, you can see it online, and there's like we have more time to go over each of this criteria that was considered. But yes, we use groundwater wells, and if we go to the next slide, we'll see more groundwater wells, and then next slide, please. Also aridity calculation and irrigated lands. This as well was calculated using GIS, Geographic Information System, satellite images to see like changes in land cover, changes in irrigated lands. Of course, irrigated lands are important. If you search online, you'll see that around 45% of the groundwater is being used for agriculture. Actually, in the state of Sonora, it's around 75%. So 75% of the water, the groundwater in Sonora, is used for agriculture, for example. So if the more irrigated lands that we have in an area, then we can assign a higher priority, because it means that like it can be associated with the groundwater use, and it can be associated with increasing water demand, etc. So if we go to the next slide, we will find a table with all the information that I presented, like the results for each aquifer. You can see the different aquifers, the area population density, transboundary confidence, groundwater availability. You can see transboundary groundwater flows, the number of wells, the aridity index, and the irrigation plans. So this information together allowed us to prioritize the aquifers that are more critical or in need of transboundary aquifer assessment. Important to note, if you see the Sonorita Puerto Peñasco, they have a deficit of minus 83.72 millions of cubic meters per year. That's terrible. That's like it's a worst case that we had. Here, then, if you go to the San Pedro, you have a deficit of minus 6.71. Douglas Agua Prieta, it also has a deficit. If we go to the Santa Cruz, it shows a 0. Well, it means that it's like equilibrium, but one bad move in the Santa Cruz, and that year, like if they make this that every year. So if next year, let's say this year, 2025, we receive less precipitation or like something different within the equation, they can easily move to deficit as well. So it just means that it's not negative, but it's also close to negative. So that's the information. And then if we go to the next slide, we will see the weights of this different criteria. So we'll see the list of the information: population density, transboundary confidence, groundwater availability. Weights were assigned according to the importance for the decision that we wanted to make. The decision was to prioritize aquifers. So, for example, if I wanted to do that for us, it was important to make sure about the transboundary confidence. That's why they have like the higher weight. Also, something else that was important was the transboundary groundwater flow. So if this is for transboundary aquifer assessment, I want to make sure that these aquifers are transboundary and that there are transboundary groundwater flows. That's why they receive like the higher score. Then we move one by one in the through the rest of the criteria, and most of them they have like similar weights. Then depending on the results of this research, let's say population density, if we have 0 to 20 people per square kilometer, then we assign it a different weight. So depending on the answer that we had for the different criteria, we assign it an additional weight. And if we go to the next slide, we can see that the result, like the combination of these different factors, would end up giving me the level of priority. So this is like sort of like we translated information that was different units, different sources of information. In some cases, it was words like some transboundary water confidence or limited groundwater confidence. So we needed to translate it to the same language, like a numerical language where we could add the different factors and come up with an answer. So that's what we did using different weights. The weights reflected the level of importance of these different factors. And by adding all that information, we end up with this priority level. And we were able to like put together the different aquifers and rank them by importance. So if we can go to the next slide and see in this table, like I'm not showing you how many wells, I'm not showing the level of confidence with words, I'm not showing you like the population density using like people per square kilometers. I'm just using the different the results of this multi-criteria assessment, and at the end I arranged them by level of priority. So you'll see that the Sonorita Puerto Peñasco aquifer system is showing first. And this was really evident, like even without making the calculation, that minus 83 millions of cubic meters deficit, it was like, this is crazy. This is gonna win you. We didn't even need to do all this to understand that. It also came like really high with the aridity index and all that had to do with irrigation lands, etc. So Sonorita Puerto Peñasco was first, then Santa Cruz Aquifer and San Pedro aquifers were second and third, and that's consistent with their selection as Transboundary Aquifer Assessment Program aquifers. And the Sonorita Puerto Peñasco is not a top aquifer, and it also, like the population in that area, it's less than the rest of the aquifers. It was because of the deficit. It was because of the condition, because it's a really arid dry region. So first place, second and third San Pedro. The fourth one, it was the Douglas Agua Prieta. We've been in different meetings so far where we talk about the transboundary aquifers or priority aquifers, and then someone raised their hand and they say, oh, why don't you study the Douglas Agua Prieta region? And then we always say like, oh, it would be nice, etc. So right now we can see that it's also a priority aquifers according to this ranking. And then you'll see like the rest of the aquifer, less population, less groundwater demand, but still important to study. This is just a guide for decision makers to like move forward with additional studies. And as well, like the information that you can find in this article that is valuable for you, you can also use it. So we can move to the next slide. And I think I'm done. If that's so these are the results which I already mentioned. And then yes, consistent with the Santa Cruz and San Pedro, Sonita Puerto Peñasco first place, next priority Douglas Agua Prieta, and then lower priority for Los Vidrios, Ribatar, and Arroyo San Bernardino Valley. So we can go to the next slide. And some of the discussion, well, this method is useful for decision making, and you can like tailor the criteria to specific needs. So the need of this study was to find aquifers for assessment. Depending on the need, you can adjust your criteria, you can adjust like the sources of information. There were some limitations regarding the criteria that we use. For example, we have here ADQ. We really wanted to add water quality. But as I mentioned, it was important to have water quality information for every single aquifer that we were studying. And it was important that we had information for the use portion of the aquifer and for the Mexican portion of the aquifer. So we couldn't add water quality because it wasn't like a source of information that was like homogeneous for the whole region. We also wanted to add governance and hydropolitical factors, but at the end of like when we were trying to put together the different pieces, we saw that it was important, but for transboundary aquifer assessment, like it was more important to know wells, it was more important groundwater flows, etc. Sometimes we have like lack of consistent groundwater level data. So instead of groundwater wells, I would have liked to see groundwater levels, but not only groundwater levels, it's evolution of groundwater levels. Because like that the aquifer conditions are different in every region. So what could tell us an idea of the health of the aquifers would be if the aquifer levels are going down, or they're staying the same, or they're going up. So that's something that could be really useful. It's not available, not in the US and not in Mexico, but it's important to highlight. Future recommendations, stakeholder engagement for complementary insights. So this different criteria, like it's also useful to have these meetings where you can tell me, oh, why aren't we considering like industrial users or so. We had some comments about industrial or the people that was at the webinar, remember? So stakeholder input is really important. This methodology, it can be adapted, it can be replicated, and it's robust enough to be able to use it within the US-Mexico border and even take it to somewhere else. Data gaps, well, we had some inconsistencies, etc. But despite these limitations, the binational available data, it revealed key stressors and also groundwater availability.
Yeah, and if I could just close it out here in that, number one, you don't have to take pictures of the slides because all these slides were part of a presentation at the webinar, and so they're already posted. All of the tables came from the paper, which is available for anybody through a link. And but what I wanted to say was, this has been discussed, this whole idea of the multi-criteria analysis. How do you prioritize? And we had some discussions across the states and with others in the paper and even on the other presentations, she acknowledges some USGS personnel and whatever. And the optimal idea would have really been to have workshops on this, and we still could, but we thought, given our scarcity of resources in having the resources to go out and do these and conduct binational workshops and have Mexico agree with us to do it, we thought it was worthwhile, and you can see a tremendous amount of work went into this, to have the framework put out. So, you know, yeah, you can poke holes and poke at it, but it got out a framework about which we can have conversations. So, you know, I really appreciate all the work Elia did on this to get to this point.
Thank you, Elia. Thank you, John. We had two great presentations. We went a little bit over time. But let's give the both presenters a good hand. It leaves us a little bit over time, but I think we can expedite by seeing if there's any public comment first of all.
I did receive a text from somebody saying they had tried to ask a question earlier and they'd like to ask one now. I think it's and it was Yesenia. I don't know if she's still on. She tried to call in and ask a question earlier and texted me to request she could be unmuted to ask.
Did we miss a raised hand online? Must
Oh, she might have dropped.
have given
I
up.
apologize.
We apologize. Any public comment from those in person?
I had a
Yes, saying you had question.
presentation. Thank you very much. I think the decision analysis tool was very innovative. I had not expected to see that. We use it in engineering all the time for different alternatives, right? So I never thought of it of the natural environment. But I think it would be very interesting to start using criteria and weighting that is related to potentially socioeconomic, or I can just see how this could balloon. I think you're right. Should we open up to a public comment period and get everyone's input? You might never get out. It's going down so many rabbit holes. But I think if there were a way to tie the natural environment to some of that natural environment, human interface, and how it affects economics, there might be some really interesting ways to do that. Store and
We thought about it, but it became like complicated.
Yeah.
But we wanted to associate, let's say, for example, the agricultural groundwater use with the the money that they make by like selling their average.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
something that has to do with the economy of the activity that
Yeah.
is using the water.
Yeah.
Actually, we did have a study, an internal study that was done by Mary Bell with some help. With, we did collect some data about economic activity along some of these border communities. But it wasn't good enough to
It
use
needed
for
to
this.
like the same data I
Yeah.
needed that for each aquifer, and it wasn't presented in the same way. So
Yeah.
there were like asymmetries in information, but I still want to do it maybe for next efforts.
Yeah.
And it's great to have an engineer suggest that.
Suggestion just for sure.
Any other public comment? We need to move on.
1 minute comment.
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to express, on behalf of the Environment and Water Committee from the Arizona Mexico Commission, our deep thank you, Elia, because you were a wealth of information. One of the priorities that has been set from the committee is to work on the San Pedro Aquifer by the governor's instruction, and you provided so much information for the model that is being built. So thank you for that. Just wanted to make that.
At this point, guests can be dismissed and we'll move on to the board discussion, but if you want to stay, you're certainly welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all for showing up.
Yeah, thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim.
And again, we're
Go ahead.
glad you chose, oh, that's my phone. Glad you chose to be here, so.
And thank you for the venue. So board members, we can discuss possibly the best thing to do is go ahead and look for agenda items for our next meeting, which apparently may be in Cochise County. We're not sure at this point.
Chevy, we haven't been in Cochise. We haven't shown them any love for quite a while.
That's right.
So,
I keep thinking that's our next place where we should be, and we were gonna be.
Right. We were gonna be, and then this one
Douglas.
happened,
From the board that would want to join our discussion for agenda items for our next meeting. Guess we can always do this, Frankie, with emails.
I can email something out, yeah.
Ben, with it, did you want the suggestions as if it is Cochise?
Pardon?
Thank you.
Did
Thank you,
want
Mayor.
our
Thank you so
agenda
much.
discussions or suggestions as if the focus is to be on Cochise County?
Well, we can
Thank you.
do them for the next time we're in
Thank
Santa
you.
Cruz again. I mean, if we
Yeah.
don't
Thank
have.
you, everybody.
Thank you for
Thanks.
attending,
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
But I think there's some interesting developments that just transpired at Naco, on the Mexican side of Naco. The state commission was involved with some of the kickoff of some of the cleaning of the collection system and realignment. So I think that'd be an interesting topic. I know it's a
For Cochise County.
for Cochise County, it's an important topic for the local community there. So maybe we can get a presentation from either SELA or somebody, preferably SELA or NAVBank on what the current status is and the progress they've made. That might.
I think Frankie's taking notes.
Yeah, what did you say was about? Yeah,
Hmm?
what was the subject?
The work being done in Naco, Sonora on the collection system.
Well, that's what we talked about when we were there, about a year and a half ago.
Right. And so
We had a presentation on that, what was going on in Naco, Sonora.
right. So we have some recent things that have just happened in the past few weeks, some positive moves. So a lot of that work that NAVBank was talking about with the work that they were going to do is finally starting to kick off. So there's been a lot of concern on the US side over there because some of the recent fugitive flows and things like that. So it's an important topic.
Good update.
Yeah.
Time for an update.
So NAVBank or SELA, you said?
Yes.
Bank.
Yeah.
I'll
We have
target
another-
NAVBank.
Yes.
Suggestion over here, John?
I don't know if we need a big segment, but we've been waiting a long time for the National Aquifer Study for Santa Cruz River. I mean, a long time.
That's Gilbert. So
Yeah, Gilbert and I, he's very patient with my bi-monthly, whatever notices, but I don't know if the binational aquifer study here, or sorry, for the Santa Cruz River, or if there's something going on south of the border. Well, sorry, it is going on south of the border. Whether there's anything in the TAP renewal on this side that whether funding is still available and is USGS was right at the end and they just were supposed to correct 3 errors or I made that up, but a certain number of errors and we still don't have it. So both sides of the border need to get their act together and then get it out. But I don't know if it's, I just remember Ben and I looking at Kennedy Shepherd's graph at the Board of Supervisors that was showing very bad stuff for the skim. So anyway, that's a suggestion.
Brian, did you have one?
Well, yeah, when we were driving up, we talked about a theme, a subject that was mentioned about a year and a half ago, and that was a mutual conference of all the different forums across the border.
Yeah, so we're setting that
And
up.
that was mentioned, so this is not brand new, but it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Maybe it was out in Cochise that it was mentioned.
I forget where, but I do remember.
Just the potential, the possibility of having one massive meeting of all the different, and it would just give us a chance to touch on the highlights of each zone because it's a long zone and there's a lot of subjects. So it would be an introduction to the issues that everybody's facing.
That's good. It's a good idea. Yeah, Frank and I have been talking about that. We're trying to get everybody together, or at least a schedule together to see when everybody can kind of come together. Obviously it'd be a Teams meeting, so we just want to make sure that everybody can join. But we'll keep you guys posted. I'll see what I can get and keep you guys posted.
The other one I have is, we haven't heard much of an update on the NatBank study for impacts to the Santa Cruz River due to the proposed expansion of Los Aleixos. It was a NatBank study.
Right.
We have, for a while, it really had some momentum and then haven't heard much.
I think there was a EIS that was done, or an EA, right? I believe on expansion. So that's something new. That's not NatBank should update everybody on, find out where we're at, right? So,
Yeah, I think one of the concerns, and it's the expert on that, was the effect, if they have models that show the effect of what
right,
comes to you
right,
versus going the other way.
right. Absolutely. So they should. I know that, we were in some talks. They did hire, NABANK did hire a
Consultant.
consultant that we talked to, that I think you talked to you too, Ben.
We went back and forth for a while, really strong, and then all of a sudden,
Right.
never heard from him again.
And I believe it was an EPA funded event or EPA requirement. So, yeah, I don't know where we're at on that. I don't think I ever saw a actual final report on that. So that's a good. Yeah,
Not
that's
even a
good one.
continuation of,
Right.
of the coordination that we got
Right.
going.
Okay.
So that, anybody else have anything? Thanks for sticking with us.
Well, it's always interesting. It's actually very interesting when we progress on the plant update, but it's not related to that.
Right.
Think we're good? I think we can call it a night. Thank you, everybody that stuck around with us, and thank
Yes.
you all the folks online too.
Thank you. Have a great day.
We need to stretch out again.
Yeah.